Glory to God.
Hallelujah. Share the link and invite someone. If you can hear me, I would like to see your comments. If you can Okay, can you hear me very clearly now? If you can hear me very clearly, I would love to. Okay, can you hear me very clearly now? If you can hear me very clearly, I would love to. I would appreciate that. Please indicate if you can hear me very clearly. If you can hear me very clearly, let me know. Can you hear me very clearly? Am I audible? Very audible enough? Can you hear me? All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so I was saying something about the operation of things that happen in the family where we all come from. And sometimes the when it comes to the matter of family patterns, problems, I have tried to study these things a little, and something stands out for me that I want you to take note of and attention of is that when it comes to a curse, a pattern, an issue in a family, you need spiritual intelligence when we are dealing with matters around curses, patterns in family, and all those things, cycles. This is how the life of somebody played out years ago. And we call it pattern because the next person after their life played out the same, somebody else is coming and their life is playing out the same. Somebody is coming next after that person and their life is playing out the same. And so we call it patterns. But you see, these things are not just patterns themselves. How do they repeat? How do patterns repeat themselves? That sometimes in a generation of 200 years, 300 years, 100 years, even 400 years, you see a pattern noticeably playing out. Different generations, different dispensations, different, approach to life and so much. But you notice the patterns are the same. Let me tell you something. Patterns operate, of course, demons are the ones that enforce these things. We know all of that. But something I want to pay attention to is there is something called familiar spirits. Don't just wait. Believe me, you don't know where I'm going to. There's something called familiar spirits. Familiar spirits operate. We call them familiar spirits because a familiar spirit um, is a spirit that has existing information, that has awareness, that has a certain level of understanding of an individual, their family, the history of the family. That's why we call them familiar spirits. It's like you see somebody and you say you're a familiar person, and the person says, "Yes, I'm very familiar." And you ask the person, the person says that, "Yes, I know you from somewhere. You look very familiar." Why? It's because there's a history. Anywhere you hear familiar spirit, it's because there is an history. So familiar spirits are those spirits that know a person. They have an history of that person. So anytime you see, that's why I said that many times we don't have victory. I've seen this, I told myself, I said many times we don't have victory because we don't have supporting intelligence for the bodies we have to break out of patterns, to see the victory of Christ experienced in our lives. So, when it comes to familiar spirit, there are spirits that operate with intelligence, and this intelligence it does not necessarily come from trying to gather information. It comes from what has been known from time past. Now, that is established. You know what familiar spirits are now. They are basically spirits that have history with the person. So the history they have with this person, listen, it's not just an history of this is where um, this person is coming from. I know him, I know the name or something. No, the history has to do with family, the background of the person, familial backgrounds, where the person comes from, the parents of the person, the generations of that person from time past. This is how familiar spirit they know who this person is. Now, let me say something to you. When familiar spirits operate like this, one thing I need you to understand is this. When familiar spirits, you know that they are spirits that work with history. Now, the way they operate is by telepathy. They call it telepathic operation. In a telepathic operation, Familiar telepathy is the ability to know the mind of a person, even the way before the person communicates with you. So, for example, let's assume you are thinking about something, and I can discern what you are thinking. That is telepathy. It means that what is in your mind, because the natural way of knowing the mind of a person is by communication. So, if I know your mind without you, if I know your mind without you speaking to me, is telepathy. Now, familiar spirits operate these things. They bring thoughts to a person. Now, let me explain something to you. That is a context to telepathic operation. You see, in telepathic operation, a familiar spirit, the telepathic operations of familiar spirits operates by invitation. And I will explain. So, for example, the last person, let's say there are four generations, and they've always had problems in their marriages. They've had problems in their marriages. They've had problems in their finances, right? Good. Now, when these families, they've had problems in their finances, they've had problems in their marriages and all. When these families, the first generation, second, about 150 to 200 years apart, the same pattern is playing out in a family. One of the things you would notice is that this is familiar spirit operating. Now, let's assume that I am in this generation, and probably 90 years ago, somebody got married 90 years ago. Now, that is not when he was born, that was when he got married. He made a mistake. 70 years, somebody made 60, 50, down to this generation. Are you getting what I'm saying? What that means is that the person who has come to understand that the way familiar spirits work, they try to lure you through telepathic operation by an invitation. Let me break it down for you. So you will notice that the person that got it wrong in marriage, he chose a woman he loved. Let's assume it's a man, and he chose her, maybe knowing the spiritual implications of I am not supposed to marry this lady, and he chose that lady, or it's a lady, I'm not supposed to marry this man, and she chose that man, knowing the implications on ground already. But there is a reason. I feel like this is the person I should marry. This is the person that is made for me, right? Now, watch this. When that stuff happens, this is the person I should marry. When that stuff happens, the next person that will come also is going to marry a wrong person. But let me tell you how familiar spirit will frame it. They will not just come to the dream of the person and say, marry this person. No, they will, it's telepathy. They know that you are a combination of the blood of the person. Everything about us is in our blood. So that blood that you have came from somebody. It means that the tendencies that lure that person can easily lure you also. So it's telepathy. So before you make the move physically, familiar spirit will use telepathic operation to, they will be like, we should know what's in the mind of the person. So they send an invitation to you. So this person is going to marry another lady, and he tells the lady that, okay, no problem, I will marry you. Knowing fully well, either by God or by just some means, that this is not the person I'm supposed to marry. Let me tell you where I'm going to. If you are a young person and you do not pay attention to your decision, you don't pay attention on the tripod of spiritual intelligence, strategic calculations by history, and then the wisdom of God. If you don't use these three things to pay attention to your decisions, you will repeat patterns in a grand style. You will repeat patterns in a way that will shock you yourself. Listen, from generational causes or patterns, you come down to familiar spirits. From familiar spirits, you come down to telepathic operation. Then from telepathic operations, you come down to what we call decisions, to infiltrations of decision. Sometimes a young lady can make a decision. That's why the concept of prayer and being a spiritually discerning and wise person, it's not a joke, really. Honestly, it's literally your life depends on it. With all the things I've seen, I will never marry a man from these particular people. I will never marry somebody. I don't have anything to do with a white woman. Why would I marry somebody from the US? I will never marry a Yoruba person, a Hausa person, or something. See, if you are not saying those things, from the three things I mentioned, spiritual intelligence, strategic calculations informed by history and wisdom, you will just find out that a spirit is actually, see, the way people repeat patterns is very funny. The spirit will make you feel like this is your decision. A believer that is a young Christian that has a history of these things, if you don't know how to trace decisions, you will repeat patterns consistently over time. If you are a young person, watch your decisions. Watch your decisions in a very brutal manner. Watch your decisions. Your decisions are the closest things to repeating patterns. And that's why those that teach will tell you that we don't make decisions. Decisions actually make us. What we do is that we choose decisions. We don't make decisions. When we choose a decision, the decision will now make us. God did not give us the power to choose um, consequence. He only gave us the power to make choices. It is our choices, which is our decision, that determines our consequences. I don't have too much to say. I just have like a few more minutes and I'll be out of here. I just felt led to do this. Watch your decisions. Watch your decisions. Watch your decisions as a young person is the easiest way. See, sometimes people hit like 40 years, 43, 44, 45, right? You know what now happens when they hit that 40? They're not like, how come this decision? Okay, I think my parents, they told me that this was exactly the mistake they also made. My mom told me that this was also her decision. This was how she made the decision that she made years ago. And sometimes we are surprised, like after like 30 years, people get to 50 years and they realize, why did I make that decision? Why did I cut off from that family? Why did I? Patterns are very real. See, study patterns a lot. I personally have seen some of these things. Let your decisions, let me say something to you. We are not old enough to make decisions. We are only wise enough to make decisions. Nobody is old enough to make a decision. We are only wise enough to make a decision. If you hear old enough, assume that it is a way of saying that you have acquired wisdom enough to make a decision. Decisions are the closest things when a believer is about to make a mistake. Watch your decisions. And that's why sometimes you will notice that there are certain decisions believers want to make. You know what Satan will do? He will make sure that we don't talk to anybody about it. He will make sure that we allude that God spoke to us when He didn't. He would make sure that you just, any voice around you, separation, isolation, so that decisions will be made. Satan will cook up stories that will make people think, like, I'm the one making it now. I need to go leave Nigeria. I need to go to the US. And the person will go to the US, 40 years of their life in there, laboring, kids, families, that's all. And after the whole 40 years are over, the person will just realize that I cheated myself. Have you seen people say that stuff? I cheated myself. After everything God put in this life, all I was able to do was to have a family and some few stuff here. That's all. They died with their wonders inside of them. Familiar spirits are not necessarily after people not having money, except if the money is what is going to help them to fulfill God's purpose for their lives. They are not after people's marriages, except for the fact that it can threaten their grand operation. And you must understand that familiar spirits are like representative. They represent principalities. Principalities are the core background. Familiar spirits are the ones that represent principalities at the forefront. But they are the ones that actually they are runners. They run programs. It's like when they code, a computer programmer comes and start coding something. What he's coding may not be his own. It can be my own. I'm the owner of the company. I get to tell him that this is the kind of software I want to build. He is not the one. He's not the one that we. He's just the one that will put the code inside. He's not the owner of the code. It is what I want to do as the owner of the company that will determine the kind of code that programmer will run into that system. That's how familiar spirit operates. So they run codes into people using telepathic operation. And telepathic operations operate majorly on decisions. People think that many times demons, when we speak about what are we calling altars or demons, sometimes people's mind go to a village, right? A monument like a stone, a carved out place where they will kill a human being, a dog, a cat, all those things. That's where people's mind go to. But believe me, under God, that is not just the only thing. So when you understand patterns, when you understand these things I'm sharing with you, some of you as you are listening to me will trace certain decisions. Do you know? Have you seen parents that will tell their children that, look, this exact life you were living, I lived the exact same thing. Meanwhile, watch this. That child has never spoken to the parents before. And the dad can be telling the son that this thing you are doing, this was exactly how I lived my life 35 years ago. And he has never had a conversation with the man. In fact, for him, he is more informed because he has an iPhone, he has Twitter, he has Instagram. So for him, he feels like he's enlightened enough to make that decision. But a spirit is influencing that decision. Any believer that is decision conscious, it's very hard for them to repeat patterns. Yes, I tell you this under God. Any believer that is decision conscious, it is very difficult for them to repeat patterns. I want to close, I want to end. Um, I'll be back in your faces tomorrow. We are fasting in the month of September, fasting September 1st to September 30th, as God gives anybody grace. And then we'll be assembling here in the evening just to share some stuff with you that I believe will bless you. I hope that you've had one or two stuff this evening that will shape your life. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you.